was just saying to Shai that I am apologizing for appearing so unprofessional this morning, but I'm going to take a page out of your podcast and be compassionate with myself and say, it's okay, Becky. Sometimes we can't do everything, and we have to do our best. And this is you're showing up and doing your best, and that's all right.
Love it.
As an older brother, I want you to know all I ever ask of my sisters is just that they arrive. They don't have much more to do for this podcast than arrive. Here we are, and welcome to another episode of the Friday Night Movie Podcast. My voice is extra low and romantic today because today we are going to talk about love. We have with us the amazing relationship expert, Mollie Eliasof. I pronounced it right, Mollie, correct?
You got it.
A podcast host, a therapist, a relationship guru, is going to not only analyze the three siblings and some of our love lives, but she is going to analyze some fictitious couples. And you know how much we care about those relationships, those ships, as we say, how emotional I get about some of them. And we're going to ask for her advice. Welcome, Mollie. It is great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chop up and think about all these relationships, but no formal analysis is happening. Nothing strictly out of my mouth is ever therapy unless I am in a setting that's therapy. Just throw that out there. But I'm excited to talk all things love and relationships for sure.
That is a really good point. We don't want to. Becky is the only one who gives unsolicited, unqualified medical advice on this
that
show.
You must take.
But she is not a medical professional at all. So, Mollie, before we get into, we're going to just jump in a moment, but tell the audience where I usually do this at the end, but I want to do this at the top because once this gets going, everyone's going to be listening to all of your stuff all the time and booking you for appointments. What are the shows that you host and where can people catch you? Because your relationship, that's why I heard you giving relationship advice and I was like, we need this person.
For sure. So I'm at More with Mollie, Mollie spelled Mollie on Instagram. It's the best place to find me. I talk about everything that I'm doing there, but that's the same name as a podcast, More with Mollie, Mollie. So you can check me out there where I talk about all things that we can do to improve and enhance our lives. So that's our love life, our ability to feel strong in ourselves and our business. And then on Clubhouse, if you're there, I host a intentional morning setting 3 days a week. So you can find me in Clubhouse, same name. I look forward to connecting.
Absolutely. All right. So let's start. Let's get into it. I love that my sisters, when we started writing the outline for this, the first question was, all right, who's got a story about their husband or wife? And I don't know who's going to go first, Becky or
Me.
Lily? Lily. Okay.
Lily. Yeah.
Tee up
Lily
the setting
has the
for
most
Mollie as to
stories.
what is going on
Mollie.
for you in life.
I am a Jewish Canadian American.
Love.
Okay. Daughter of a guy from Brooklyn and a woman who's Cuban but grew up in Puerto Rico, yet was raised in Canada. I am married to a guy from Barcelona, so Spaniard, who we live in the Canary Islands because he's a surfer and he's a professional martial artist and he's very Spanish. And
converted to Judaism.
And yes, he converted to Judaism and I converted to Spain. So I live here and he's Jewish. And about 10 months ago, my parents got stuck here during the pandemic. So they live with us now. And it's been 10 months. They are going to go home soon, relatively soon, in about 2 months. But that will have made it about a year. And so my husband lives with his in-laws. And luckily everybody gets along really, really well. But the other night, and like this has so many layers, so I'm just gonna really give you a lot to chew on here. The other night I'm in bed with my husband. We have a newborn too. And so our little baby's not sleeping.
And a 4-year-old.
and a 4-year-old. We have a 4-year-old and a newborn. And, we're like whispering like before bedtime. And he turns to me, he's like, I don't want to complain, but I just want to let you know your mom keeps like putting your dad's underwear in my like clothes pile. And I'm like, oh, okay, probably like she probably mixed them up. He's like, yeah, and like they're just like a little bit tight. and I go, well, I think you had to wear them. I think you could have just returned them. And he's like, well, hey, I don't have clean underwear. I don't mind. I just wanted to let you know, maybe you want to let her know. And I was like, I can't go to sleep now. I furiously texted the story to Becky and Shai. And I was like, now I cannot sleep. So that I feel just kind of like represents the last 10 months of my life. But that's a story about my husband.
Mollie,
Love it.
oh, this doesn't even come with a question. Lily's just
There's no question. It's just that this is the blanket.
It's
statement.
rhetorical.
I have a question. I got 2 little kids, 1 and 3. We are in like a couple of weeks. We are moving out of our house, which you can only imagine is like so much work to prepare the house and go through every single last thing we own, and just it's a lot of work. In the midst of all this, in a pandemic, when I'm at home and all the time with the kids working from home and we're dealing with the house, my husband is going to go on a 3-day surf trip. So here's my question: is he the worst or am I the best? Which one is it?
Oh my God, there's so much in all of what just happened in the last like 5 minutes. It's amazing. Okay, first of all, let me backtrack because Lily, like, let me just make a comment. If that is your husband's biggest complaint, like you're in a good shape right now. Like that's great. That's great.
That's not bad.
Complaint done.
Not bad. Should he be wearing my dad's underwear? That's up for debate.
That's a whole other conversation. I don't know if I'm qualified to talk about that. Oh my God. Becky, I love this. You're never the worst for ever wanting needs, and neither is he. The question is how you navigate that together is really just the key. So if you've already given the A-OK, you give them the A-OK, right? But all you can do is express yourself like, hey, here are my logistical concerns. I know that you like don't check your phone while you're surfing. I know that things have been crazy with the kids. I know I'm going to need packing stuff. I don't know, like need more boxes and stuff. And I don't know how to move around that. So just having open communication before he goes. This is where I'm at. This is where I think I'm going to freak out while you're away. And this is what I'm going to need from you while you're away. So that he can show up and actually like do his part, even if it's while surfing on the beautiful waves.
That's very good advice.
I feel more relaxed having heard that. Like
Me too.
Like,
now Shai
and
I are better equipped to deal with those 3 days.
Exactly.
Well, I know. I just think like what it's helpful with is being like, it's okay for my partner to have needs and to honor those, but like I still have like space in that conversation. It's not just about him. It's like, okay, well then there's a balance, and then how are you going to take care of me while you're not here? So, and it kind of like gives me permission, hearing a professional say that gives me permission to be like, okay, well, here are like the 3 things or the 5 things I need from you. Because sometimes it feels like, oh, if I'm giving my person their thing, I can't complain. And
wait, Becky, Mollie said vice versa. There's the part for Vlad too.
Yeah, there's a small caveat, right? Like, so he can like, not only go on this trip and be, which I think is such a gift that you're giving him, but also like, what does he need on that trip to reset? So that way, if you're giving him these 3 days where you're going to kind of be under more stress and duress, and that was the agreement, so he could reboot, what does he actually need to reboot? So when he shows up, he's there more for you and more as himself, So if you give him 3 to 5 things, how does he also announce 3 to 5 things? And then you just have to kind of work together to find what the middle grounds are when those 2 things conflict. Like if you're like, I want you to have phone access available 24/7. He's like, well, when I'm surfing, I can't have a little Bluetooth in my ear, then you kind of chop up and figure out where is the middle road for both of you together.
So helpful. Thank you. I feel like we're off to a good start here.
All right.
Awesome.
Now let's talk about in general, people are navigating quarantine 10 months at this point with their partners. Some people in good relationships, that are getting stronger and some that are having harder times for whatever reason. What's your sort of like base level, your one thing or maybe your two things that you say to every couple, whether they're high functioning or low functioning, as they navigate 10 months of pandemic together?
Okay, so know what you need to cope. So when I say that, I mean, like, what do you need to manage your own self, not even the relationship? So is that like quiet time? Is that walks? Is that fitness? Is that healthy food? Is that quality time with lots of giggles and not quality time that's just stressful? What do you actually need to cope and manage your own self to be your best self for your partnership and just in the home and in the relationship, especially if you have kids going on? Like, what do you need to manage? Number two is, how do you communicate about what you not only need from the interaction with your partner, but what you need from the space when you're not with your partner? So kind of similar to what we were talking about before. It's like, what do I need when we do connect with one another to feel like we're flourishing? And then when we step away from one another, how can you respect what it is that I need and I can respect what it is that you need? So you're able to rebound and be your best self when you show back up for each other.
Everyone's just like mind blown.
Digesting.
Well, I think what's hard is like it's very practical advice and seems so obvious when somebody says it out loud to you. But I think what I have a hard time with is giving myself permission to do things that are just for myself and to not feel guilty during that time and to not feel rushed during that time that I have to get back to the family or I have to do this or I have to do that, and saying like, I can have a couple of hours where I'm not organizing or cleaning or putting the kids' clothes away, or like, because I feel like every moment I'm awake, I need to be doing something productive for other people in my house. And so it's just it. And I think it takes practice, it's just like practicing, the habit of.
See, you gotta be sorting more of mom and dad's mail and producing a podcast for your siblings so you can be doing things for people outside of your house also.
Yeah. Only don't worry. I'm sure I'll get there soon.
I'm still receiving like all of their like healthcare checks.
Yeah,
I will
really
be returning them to you soon.
Becky, I'm really glad that you brought that up, because I think, everything that I talk about can be super macro. And what's really hard is like actually implementing, and I think when we get to the nitty gritty about our own truth, our own narrative, that's where like all the implementation challenges show up. So, right, feeling of guilt might be one thing, feeling of patience. I've heard a lot of like frustration as a feeling that is popping up for people, not just in this call, but like just in general with people that I work with. So I think it's about how do you get what you need, but also understanding the barriers that come in the way of that so that you're able to cope and manifest and manage it, right? So for example, with guilt and thinking about stepping away and needing to be productive, also trying to think about that whole like oxygen mask metaphor, right? Like if you want to be able to show up fully, how are you able to give yourself the reboot that you need to, be the best you possible? And this goes for like everyone listening, it's like, if we want to try and do it all for our family, we have to remember that we can't. And that's why we have a partner, or if we're alone parenting, that's why, we need to do things in the recovery moments, even when going to the bathroom or splashing water on our face, to show up more for our kids when we come back into the space. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. I hope we keep going into like nitty gritty examples. I think we have more coming, so we can talk about how to.
And in fact, we're going to move into the realm of fictitious pop culture characters, because this podcast promises people not to do anything timely or important. And we already just did some timely and important things. So we better segue soon. Let's just talk before we give some couple advice. Let's just take a moment. Mollie specializes in I don't know if it's celebrity couples, but you specialize in high functioning people who are couples, right? Like, isn't that one of your specialty areas?
High powered professionals. So celebrities, like award-winning performers, athletes, CEOs, lawyers, doctors, etc.
So now we're going to just talk through some of our favorite relationships, like fictitious relationships of all time. Later we'll go in and we'll get some advice for some of the other ones, but I'm going to start by talking some of my favorites of all time and why. And then, Mollie, if you want to like weigh in at different times, because I'm sure you've heard of like 10% of these, which will also make it kind of funny. So my first one, my most important one, is Aang and Katara from the Last Airbender series. These are two people who at the age of 13 were refugees and fought their way across the earth essentially to unite a kingdom and depose a despot. And while they might have dropped into the friend zone at different times, at the very last minute of the stories, you realize these two were really meant together. And Aang's playfulness and Katara's serious type A-ness and his chosen one sort of status is balanced so beautifully by everything that Katara brings to the table, and the fact that they ended up together has always like that was I was stressed that they might end up together until they did. And then they'd go on to have 3 beautiful children who would themselves in future generations help the future Avatar, Korra, who is also one of our favorite characters, and her relationship with Asami, which is only revealed at the very, very last seconds and implied because of the uptight world not wanting to have same-sex relationships in a cartoon for children, but they actually were groundbreaking in that sense. But Korra and Asami is amazing. Another relationship that really means a lot to me and has been developed beautifully in the subsequent books. And here you have Korra, who's kind of like all physical, and Asami's very cerebral, and I love their relationship so much. And then David Rose and Patrick on Schitt's Creek, when they get together, and specifically when David sings the Tina Turner song, the best to him, when he
Simply the Best. Yeah, that
Simply
is
the
such
Best.
a great. That's
When
such
he-
a great.
he
Wait, Mollie, do
lip-syncs
you
it.
not watch Schitt's Creek?
I don't really watch TV that much.
So
If
I'm
you're
not
gonna
tuned
watch,
yet.
if you're
So-
gonna watch one thing, this might be the thing.
So David Rose is this very privileged kid who ends up, they lose everything, and he lives in this town, and he ends up eventually learning business skills from this other guy, Patrick, and they fall in love. But the process of them falling in love is so beautiful, and letting their guard down and being vulnerable with each other, but also being business partners and helping each other is just wonderful in this
Special.
very small town. And then my all-time favorite probably is Leslie Knope and Ben Wyatt from Parks and Rec. Leslie Knope, as a former public servant myself, Leslie Knope and her super nerdy REM loving boyfriend Ben Wyatt. Like, to me, the two of them are, if I married like two parts of my personality ended up together, is why I love them.
Love it, and I'm obsessed with them. That is the one out of all of them that I know, and I'm
Okay.
obsessed with that love story.
It's a
That's
great,
good. That's
just
a great one.
They're a great couple. And
Yeah.
And all right, Lily, who are your favorite ones? Lily especially likes
What?
star-crossed
What?
love.
I was gonna say, what's my thing about couples, fictional couples, is the more star-crossed, the better. And is there, Becky, a greater star-crossed love story? And I mean, like, these two put Romeo and Juliet
No.
to shame.
I know.
There is no better than Jamie and Claire from Outlander.
No one better than Jamie and Claire.
And if
Jamie
you
and
don't
Claire
watch
are
TV,
the number
you
one.
can read the book. Like, you could read, like, I read the first book. If you read the first book, you don't need to watch the show.
The question
Yeah.
is do you
That book is like, you
do
can't
you
stop.
like frontier medicine, time travel, and old English romance?
The greatest love
I mean,
story of all time.
that's just like, it's like a triple threat, Shy. I mean, it's
So Jamie and Claire. Okay, just in case there's a small chance you might ever read the books, or even just the first book, or watch it. I'm not going to get too deep, but I will just say, across literal, like, two people who are so meant together to be together that, like, 200 years couldn't time nor space
could keep
separate
them
them.
apart. They would find
Okay.
a way to be together.
right? And it's like very intense. So Jamie and Claire in the number one spot. And then also very star-crossed, very like a gigantic story. Also a book Becky recommended to me but it is a famous movie.
Whoa,
Becky
okay, because I'm like,
recommended the
how many
book.
books are we talking about on this show at this point?
Shai doesn't like to read. But these are all actual, like, been turned into audiovisual material, Shai. So the Princess Brides couple, Wesley and Buttercup, like, honestly, of course I saw the movie before I read the book, because hello. And so then Becky was like, you really should read the book. It's really good.
I think the book might have even come out after the movie. I'm not sure which one is first.
No, I think the book is first.
Okay, I don't know.
I don't know. But those two, like, again, star-crossed, meant to be.
They
Not
spent
really
a lot of time arguing and insulting each other, which I feel like.
So do Jamie and Claire. Fire, Shai. Gotta have fire and passion. So do me and my husband. Like,
true.
most people think we're fighting and it's just a normal talking volume for us. So, and then I'll let Becky go more into this.
By the way, when you're speaking of fighting, my sisters laugh because they make fun of, like, my wife.
I love you more. Oh no, I love you more. No,
That's
I
how
love
they
you
say.
more. No, don't yell. Shai, don't yell at me. I'm so sorry. I love you. That's them fighting. Whereas, like, in my house, things get thrown. So it's like a very big juxtaposition. And then I'll leave, like, Coach and Tammy for Beck, because that was on your list and you're the one that recommended that show to me. Those are like hashtag couple goals, Tammy and Coach Eric. And then my other one, I think that, like, I can't not put on the list is Monica and Chandler from Friends, who started off as friends, and they're not star-crossed, but, like, there was some, drama of them getting together, and ultimately, like, the best friend marriage.
They're the better couple on that show. Like, they win that show. Whereas
Yeah,
Ross
Phoebe
and
and
Rachel,
Mike
to
are
this
pretty good,
day, I'm
too.
like, are Ross and Rachel even still together? But Monica and Chandler, unstoppable.
So I didn't want to repeat any of what you guys said, but I do totally agree. But some of my other couples include Chuck and Sarah, which I will go into again later. And just to say that the reason I love that from Chuck, the reason why I love Chuck and Sarah from the show Chuck is because it's proof that the nice guys do get the girls. Like, the nice guy gets the girl. And I think that's just a great example of someone being, like, a good person, or two good people coming together, and, like,
and they bring out good things in each other.
They bring good things in each other, and, like, she's presumably out of his league, but, like, no, it's about values, right? And I feel like for those two, it's about, like, they're both good people. Anyway, so Chuck and Sarah, and I love the evolution of their love story. It's so well done. Next one is a new one, Rayla and Callum from The Dragon Prince, because it's complicated, but this is cartoons, animated series.
Okay, this is like Shai and Becky's thing.
But, like, Lily loves a star-crossed lover situation. Lily loves a star-crossed lover situation. They are from two different
races.
Like, not even just, like,
not like races, like all people are human. Yeah, they're different species.
No, like two different species basically that are at war and hate each other, and they're, and they come together and have a shared purpose, and from that their love grows. And all I'm gonna say is he literally grows magical wings for her to save her, like something that's impossible for humans to do. So I'm just saying, like, when you're really in love, you can achieve
you're selling
great things.
This to me. You're selling.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah.
We love the Rayla and Callum story.
He transcends, like, he is able to transcend the previously thought limits of his quote unquote species to protect her. Yeah. And she's in general the one that's protecting him, which is also the best part.
Yeah,
like,
it's
he's
adorable.
He's very meek.
It reminds me kind of like in Force Awakens of, like, Rey and Finn, where he's like keeps like protecting. Yeah, Chuck and Sarah, right? Oh yeah, right. Coach and Tammy Taylor, which I don't know if you haven't seen Friday Night Lights. I mean,
that's another one. Oh my God,
people really do talk about couple goals, and I think the reason that's important is because
for your profession, I think it's a cool show to watch.
It's the adult couple goals. I think a lot of the ones we've mentioned, or maybe it reminds me a bit of Leslie and Ben. Leslie Knope and Ben Wyatt, because it's like, it's a very adult relationship, and it's like, ooh, I want to have that kind of adult relationship one day. And then another newer one is from Normal People, Connell and Marianne, because
That's very intense.
Oh, it's so
That's-
intense. But the reason it's an important one is because
It's really intense.
it's about how love and your first love helps you grow as a person. And that doesn't mean that you're going to be together forever, but what you take away from a relationship and how you can better yourself from a relationship. Not every relationship has to be like damaging and traumatic, but it could be about like growth and change and moving forward to the next phase in your life. And that's really what you take away from that. And it's so beautiful. So those are mine.
How about you, Molly? Now we know. Are there any
Oh boy.
in pop culture that stand out to you, or are there any that we described that
You
you're
may
like,
include
oh,
books, even
I'd
though
like
Shy's
to-
against books.
Or maybe like real good ones.
You
maybe
talk
real
about
couples.
And I
Any
since she
celebrities, like in real life,
an
you want
influencer.
to
Um,
my God.
or maybe there's like ones that we listed where you're like, I would love to work with these couples and bring them to the next level.
Well, what I kept thinking about when you guys were sharing, and I don't mean to get too like serious. This is part of how my brain works a little bit. It's like and you guys talked about this a little bit. It's like, what is so appealing about each one of those love stories to you, right? And so I was thinking about like, who are my couples? Who are the couples that stand out to me? Or can I even name anyone in a TV show or a movie that's a couple outside of what you've named? I was like, well, what comes to me is more couples with drama. That's not the couples that I aspire to. It's just what makes it good TV or a movie, right? So it's really interesting to think about like what pulls us into characters versus aspiration versus like, what's just enticing and interesting. So for me, the drama is so interesting because like that's part of what I help heal, right? Like I like to see the problem manifest itself so I could think about the resolution. But for sure, out of everyone that you named, like Leslie and Ben are like they have a warm spot in my heart. That was when I was watching more TV for sure. But the evolution of their relationship is really interesting because it's so real. Like it's so real that they end up being parents, and you could see that window as well as like when they just are first meeting one another. So it's really cool that you could see like the trajectory of what real kind of messy, not always sexy love is like all the time. And they also just do such a beautiful job infusing like support to one another consistently that it's just really heartwarming. And they like constantly are crushing on each other as like dorky and ridiculous as they're being, which is adorable.
That is funny. That is true. Leslie's like goofy things she says about Ben's cuteness are always so adorable. All right, let's talk about some couples. I wouldn't say they're couples in trouble, but these are couples. We're going to describe the premise of a particular. This is like couple therapy, not real therapy, fake therapy, couples advice, sort of, not whatever you want to call it.
Analysis.
And now, not analysis.
Yeah, insights.
Insights.
Not therapeutic insights.
Lily's going to set up our first one. Lily,
Great.
set it up and try to set it up this one less rhetorically and with a specific question.
Okay, very specific question. A couple. Do I not say like their names? So I just give
say
the
their names.
context?
Say their names because people are going to want to know the context, and some people who
Anybody listening to us besides Molly will know the context because everybody knows who these people are.
I'm
No
a
offense,
grandma.
Molly.
Like that. That's
Right.
really that's the truth.
Like honestly. Okay, so there is a couple. They've been together. Becky, you correct me if I make any mistakes. They've been together for like 2 years.
Yeah,
more or
it's about
less?
2 years.
About 2 years. He was in love
Supposed
with her.
to say, are you not saying their names?
No, I'm not saying their
Okay.
names yet. Just it doesn't matter. Let's keep them anonymous.
Lily loves a slow reveal.
Okay.
Oh my God.
He-
Give us some
We
backstory.
almost
He
were
has
on
been
time for this
in
episode.
love. It was in love with her like all of high school. He's a bit older than her, but like never told her. And then finally they get together. And it's like this big emotional thing. And they're together for about 2 years. She gets a new job. He's very jealous of her coworker and her like work situation and starts acting like a really big baby and being very possessive. And so she kind of gets sick of it and they go on a break. What she calls a break. And
She
during that
requests it,
break,
correct?
she requests the break. They go on this break, and during that period of
No,
time, which
Not during period, the first night of the break.
right,
The only
right when
night
they-
of the break.
right, exactly, because the next day she regrets the break and
Yeah.
wants to get back together. Right. So on this break, this like when she initiates the break, he was with somebody else. Then the next day, I guess she regrets the break, and wants to get back together, and their relationship is basically destroyed over the fact that he slept with somebody else, but he constantly just claims, but we were on a break. I think you know who it is.
Okay, cool. This one I got. Because I watched more TV as a teenager. So this one, preteen.
This is the biggest question.
Yeah.
Were they on a break?
Yeah.
How do you recommend couples going on a break? Ross and Rachel specifically.
That's a really good question. And part two, how they dealt with that dialogue is the other thing that I want to talk about. So number one, if you're going to go on a break in a relationship, you really need to be super specific about the guidelines. So I've helped a lot of couples in this situation before where they don't really want to get separated or divorced, but they're feeling like they're edging towards that. And the only solution they can come up with that allows them to be together without taking any kind of like legal next steps is to live separately or take a break in whatever that looks like. Now, if both people are not 100% aligned with what that means, so are we dating other people? Are we sleeping with other people? How much are we talking or not talking? Are we living in the same home or are we not? Like, how much are we sharing about each other's inner lives and just lives in the day-to-day? It's so important because then you guys are at least synced up on what the ground rules are. And everyone knows that like we are respecting what those things are and knows what to anticipate. Because I think one of the scariest things for people on a break is like the what ifs. Well, what if they're doing like seeing someone else, flirting with someone else, etc. What if they realize they don't need me? All these other things. If that's not communicated about ahead of time, you're so preoccupied with that you're not giving yourself the space to actually think about the relationship in general and what you need inside versus outside. Break. So it's a wasted break, 100%. Beautifully said. And the other piece, what was I going to share with you? Hold on, my brain. How he talked about the break is the biggest hurdle for them, right? Yeah, because the defensive response served no purpose. Whether he thought it was legit or not should not matter because she was hurting and felt a betrayal. And if he wanted the relationship to repair, rather than getting defensive by saying, but I was in the right, because that's not bringing you guys closer together, really tending to her by being like, I want to understand how you're feeling and I want to understand how we move through this moment of betrayal together. Absolutely. Did I take action on something immediately? Yes. Do I have to own that I did something that hurt you? Yes. And now I want to understand what you need from me so we can move past the chapter of hurt and reunite together.
Which explains many episodes later when she writes that like both
I think it's 12 pages,
12 pages
front and back, like front and back, single spaced.
And he falls asleep reading it. And in the morning, she's like, did you read my note? And he's like, of course I did. And in the note, basically he's admitting that he was wrong. And like, that's not what the break meant or whatever. And then when he, realizes that it means he's admitting wrong, then he takes it all back. Had he just gone with it and admitted it, then they would have been fine. So.
Yeah. And if I was working with this couple, this fictitious couple, I would go into the weeds with her as well, that like right and wrong is not what's important. So for her, this is what she gets fixated on is I need, admission of guilt. And on some level, that is definitely an important piece with betrayal. But the bigger question needed to be him owning, I have betrayed the way you feel. I have betrayed the trust in our dynamic, even if we had agreed that this wouldn't be a betrayal. You still feel betrayed, and that's the most important.
Ooh, that's complicated.
Wow, amazing.
Well, thank you.
All right, up next.
I feel like we put to bed the like massive debate of the 90s.
Yeah, this is big. This is we buried the lead there. All right, so I'm going to talk quickly about Chuck and Sarah. Chuck was a kind of a nerdy guy, thought he was out of his league. Sarah's a super spy who ends up being his guardian. He ends up becoming a super spy too. They go through tons of trauma together and fall massively in love. And right at the this is a spoiler, anyone who hasn't watched Chuck. Right at the end, Lily, you have to close yours. Right at the end of the show, after they save the world and they're finally going to be together, because you just want them to have some happiness, her memory is erased. And the show ends with
chills. I just got sad chills again.
With him recounting the entire story of their relationship and her having no recollection, but hoping that they will still be together. Now, I would say the real life version of this is that like couples who are deeply in love and some sort of traumatic brain injury or medical thing happens, and so the question I have is, where does a couple go from there where one of them's memory is literally erased and the other one has to go ahead and kind of rebuild that?
I will also say that Shy really likes 50 First Dates.
Yeah.
So like my thing might be star-crossed lovers. Shy thing is like couples with memory problems. So this is a thing.
No, it's
He
nerdy
really
guys
needs
who
this
married
answered.
someone out of their league. That's.
But then one of them, but then the
Because that's what I
girl
did.
can't remember why she likes the nerdy guy. That's literally the same story.
That's fair. So what do you recommend for a couple that's gone through some sort of like medical trauma that is hindering the what's the basis of the relationship? The experience or those two souls that are just meant to be together?
Okay, so oh my God, so much. So that's really intense and also makes me think, ready? I have one reference, like Amy and Rory, like a little Doctor Who is in my back pocket. Do you guys, none of you are Doctor Who people?
No, that's definitely a blind spot. I've seen like a little bit of Doctor Who, but never been like, I mean, like I know who the different doctors
please
are.
share the reference. I love the new Doctor, the girl Doctor.
I haven't seen the new Doctor as much. I only like saw 2 episodes, but
she's
Amy and Rory, they're not an ideal. Yeah. They're not an ideal love story in my mind, but one thing that happens early on in their season is that she totally forgets who he is, like 100%. So this is like the same kind of narrative, and he is like undying in his love for her. And so it's this, anyway, go watch that if you want another reference. It's just like this. So I think it is a really big challenging thing. This is also something that would happen like if one person got Alzheimer's, right? Like how are you going to stay dedicated and committed? And how do you want to really keep showing up for that relationship and that person? And that's really individual in terms of the decision. You know, how much Chuck really continues to pursue them, facilitating and strengthening their bond versus accepting that there's a loss there. He loves the person that was and doesn't want to attend to this person as much. That's usually not what ends up happening, right? Usually there's a fight for repairing the bond or even just staying close to that person because they mean so much. So I think it's really important to like honor and nurture your own memories if you're Chuck, right? So you're jotting things down, you're recording, you're remembering so that you know you're not alone and you also don't feel like things slip away from you as you move through things. That you have a ton of patience for yourself, that you're showing up for this other person, whether or not you're going to get any kind of reciprocation. And that third, like you hold on to your purpose, right? If the purpose is to like have feelings of these loving moments and reconnecting them with that other person, then it's going to take a lot of energy and patience. It's going to take a lot of just committing to the fact that you want to show up each day, to be next to her, to be next to the relationship, to get any inch closer. And that may be all you get. And if that is what you choose, then that is a very tireless and beautiful journey.
Okay. Well, that's like
that feels very appropriate to Chuck, because I feel like Chuck would tirelessly show up for Sarah. So that makes perfect sense.
Also, like the other solution could be they make a damn Chuck movie where the whole purpose is restoring her memories. I mean, like, can we just do that already? All right. My other one is this is a couple, you know, this is gonna get deep too. You know, Han, he's a scoundrel, had a lot of lovers across the years, not really a joiner. Leia, an idealist, fighting as a rebel for a cause, a politician herself. They end up joining together in a fight against evil, fall in love, although they're constantly fighting. They have a kid. That kid turns out to be a bit of a bad seed, murders all of the Jedis and joins the First Order. Although he is eventually redeemed, when he initially murders all the Jedis and joins the bad side, Han's reaction is to basically just bolt and leave and go back to being a smuggler running across the galaxy and kind of abandons Leia. What's your recommendation for a couple where the instinct is to run away when something happens, something that maybe is a little bit out of your control?
So I love this question and I love the reference. Thank God you gave me more background because I have watched a little bit. I haven't seen enough of this very big classic. And it's so interesting to hear it broken down this way. So there's this thing called detachment theory, which is really interesting. And I can go into that as much or as little as you want. There's a bunch of books on it. There's a really simple book that I don't always recommend it, but it just breaks it down pretty simply, called Wired for Love. But there's other books called like Attachment. And basically the concept is like early on, this is a really simplistic way to describe it, early on in our upbringing, often it's like a mother-child connection. We start to build a bond, and we start to understand as a little kid how much we are going to get soothed or supported based on our parent, in this case, the mother's reaction and interaction with us. And we start to internalize that as the truth of the way all relationships and interactions are going to have, even if consciously we understand that that's not a truth. And it doesn't have to be the mother, it can be a father, another adult figure in your life. And we start to unconsciously play that out basically in other relationships as we even become adults, friendships and marriages, etc. So what I would say for Luke is like, there could have been
Han. Luke's her brother.
Sorry, Hari.
That would be very weird.
Luke and Leia are twins.
Right, thank you. See, I told you I watched a little, but not enough to know. Okay, so
this is heavily based on the maligned sequel series that I'm asking these questions. Though,
got it. Thank you. Thanks for the understanding for what I don't know. So what I would say for Han is there probably was some intense understanding of abandonment or leaving when things got too intense or too dicey in the home, and that is the safest way to recover. So he might have been used to, a parent who was really cold or distancing or moved away or left.
Well, he was like an orphan, abandoned, there you
go,
character. So
there you go. So then what ends up happening is he uses that. We all do. We use our attachment patterns that we learn early on in our relationships as adults. So the goal as we get married or we have long-term partners is to find repair in that. So we get to a place of security rather than something that feels like it moves a lot. So the goal for Han and Leia is to really find that repair of solid ground together. So what does Han need to know to feel safe returning and staying even when things get scary and dicey? And then what does she need to communicate to him to say that that's like really important to her?
Oh, wow. So in the end, they do see each other one last time. And then his son murders him. And then
it's their son.
Their son murders him. But
it's awkward.
But then she plays a role in her dying moments to turn her son back to the good side, and he reconciles with his father through a spiritual moment and ends up helping save the universe before he dies too.
But I wonder,
very Shakespearean.
But do they have to be divorced or whatever it is in the galaxy? I don't know what the legal term is out there, but is that the only way it kind of works, that their son is evil? I feel like, could they have stayed together and been this happy couple and have an evil son? I feel like if they were going to make the son evil, it's sort of like these two were doomed. And is there any scenario in the Star Wars universe that they were going to stay together? I think when we were kids and we watched the originals, we assumed that they would stay together.
Well, in the books, they stay together, just so you know. But they do have one kid that ends up a bad seed because of the genetic predisposition of evil from the grandfather, from Darth Vader.
And they do stay together.
I think so. Yeah. I didn't read all those books, and they've now been canceled out by Disney anyway. All right, let's get to our next couple.
I'm gonna do this one. So the Duke of Hastings and Daphne.
What show is this? I have no idea what we're talking about.
And Daphne
so this
Bridgerton.
Is the newest, Molly. This is the newest, hottest show on Netflix that everybody's talking about.
It's called Bridgerton. It's called Bridgerton.
It's no
it takes place in,
but it's fun.
Please. But it takes place in Regency, England, which is the 1800s, early 1800s, I think. I don't know. I definitely had to Wikipedia that. No, 19th century. It's the 1800s.
No, isn't it before the 1800s? No, I don't know. 1800s.
Okay, that's completely. It's not completely irrelevant, but it is relevant to the issue. So Duke of Hastings and this young woman, Daphne Bridgerton, yada yada yada, they get married. But prior to getting married, one of the big conflicts before they decide to get married is that he tells her he can't have children. So he doesn't want to marry her because that would ruin her life if if he would take that away from her, this ability to have a family. But she says, no, I love you so much. I'm going to marry you even though you can't have children. You are enough for me.
She also was like looking down the barrel of being like shunned from society if she didn't find a husband. So it's a bit
Right.
forced,
So
but
it was a
she
bit
didn't
like
have him.
they had very few, basically the options were he was going to die in a duel or she was going to marry him.
Right.
Like those are
Or
the
she'd
choices
have
for her honor.
or she'd be a spinster. Like she was going
No,
to be
to
stuck,
protect
like,
her
having-
honor. Okay. So
Yeah.
the point is they get married. He says,
They
I
love
can't have
each other,
children.
though.
She goes, it's fine. This is better than nothing. Then they realize, they love each other so much. And he's still so upset he's not going to give her children. And she's like, listen, it's fine. I have grown to love you enough. You're enough for me. She later finds out
how babies are made.
how babies are actually made. Lily, who's telling this? You or me? You're so annoying.
So
Oh
good.
my God. It's like having a conversation with mom.
I'm sorry,
You spent
I
too
kn-
much time with her.
But I nodded off. What's happening?
I would tell you, Lily, stopped interrupting. So
I'll
basically,
mute myself.
they've been married for a little while now, and it comes to light that she doesn't know how babies are made. And it's not that he can't have children, it's that he won't get her pregnant. But she doesn't know how babies are made, so she just assumed he can't have kids. She doesn't realize that he's like not finishing the deed and like trying to get her pregnant. And this obviously causes like this is like a massive issue. He can't have children or he won't have children. And I'm not going to tell you how things end, but I'm curious, what would your advice be on how to have this very awkward conversation of being like, by the way, it turns out I didn't know how babies were made. By the way, you were telling this massive lie to me. Like, how does one even approach that? Because I'm going to say it's not done in a healthy way. It's done in like a really, really bad way in the show. And I kept thinking to myself, I can't imagine how you would have this conversation in a productive way.
Okay, so I can definitely break this down. I do have a clarifying question. I don't know if there's a way to be like discreet in your explanation, but I'm sorry. What is the reasoning that he is not willing to have children?
Yeah,
made
so
a
he's
promise.
not Lily. He hated his father, whose father's sole ambition in life was to have an heir. So on his father's deathbed, he swore, which back then was a very big deal. He swore to his
kept their
father
promises
that he would never have children so as not to carry on the family line and the family name to punish his father. So it's pretty arbitrary, basically.
Okay, so it's how candid can I be in my question?
No, you
Very
can be super
completely
candid. This is
I was
Lily
watching
wants
it
to
with
note
my
that our
mom.
podcast is
Okay, so to be
explicit.
clear,
Wait, I'm watching this with my mom, and she's just like, just break your stupid promise to your stupid dad and have sex properly with that girl. This is
so
my mom
they'll
yelling at
have
the
sex.
TV.
They'll have sex.
Okay.
He just pulls
But
out.
he and
Got
he just
it.
like into
Yeah.
a tissue. It's very
Got it.
funny. It happens many times.
Got it.
Oh my
Got
God.
it. So
I'm definitely not watching this show with mom.
I already watched
Outlander.
Outlander.
That's a whole other
Without-
therapy session, lady.
So wait, so is that now her understanding of sex until she finds it
yes.
out later?
So she
Yes.
knows that you have sex and you have sex to have
Okay.
babies, but she doesn't know like how I guess the baby
What the
part
act
is made. That they need,
Got it.
as it's put in the show, a strong seed.
A seed.
Oh God.
Got it. Yeah, lots of layers on this one.
Gonna book
All
an
right,
appointment with
so-
Molly after this to process this episode.
Okay, so I would say, the first thing to do in any kind of really dicey conversation with your significant other is what I call a self date. So that's really sitting down and thinking to yourself, like, what are you trying to communicate? What is the main point that you have? Because if we don't, what ends up happening is like most of the time, sometimes it happens a little more organized than this, it becomes like throwing spaghetti on the wall. So I always come to the reference of like, if you ever watch like a news morning show, usually they have like what they're talking about at the footer and also behind them. So at all times, like right now we're talking about this event and here's pictures of this event. And so you're like so tuned in, even if you're just like looking and then moving away. And so what happens is like, we will talk to our partner about, let's use this example, right? Like being confused and frustrated and shocked that there has been a lack of communication, but also, do you not want to have sex with me? And also, do you not want to have my kid? And also, what does that mean about me and what you think of me in terms of having a child? And also, is your dad more important than me? So like all of a sudden we've like splatter painted the discussion. and we're not headlining anymore. So it's so important that we get super clear in our self-date of like, what are our actual objectives, almost our bullet points in terms of what we want to share with our significant other. So they can like zoom in, understand exactly where we're going, and then respond to that. Now you don't have to pick just one, but you want to like kind of go one at a time as paced as possible so you can get the insight from them and not just like spew and then get the last thing that you spoke of as what's responded to you. So I would recommend that Daphne does a self date and writes down what is most distressing and upsetting about this to her partner. And then also reflect on that, like what is important to her regarding, you know, having a child, having sex. You know, for a couple that, you know, uses, I don't know, the pull out method, like that might mean like lead to a feeling of like less intimacy. Or another couple might be super relieved that they're not going to have pregnancy. So really figuring out like, what does it mean to you? That's the method we're using. And what do you ideally want? And that way you can talk about not only the themes that are coming up for you and each piece of distress, but where you want to go as a couple so that you meet in the middle, but like paced and slowly, and also like giving him the time to think about how he wants to respond to each one without giving him the out to not communicate. Because again, we're talking about betrayal of trust in one level, that really there was like a omission, even if it was to be protective. And so like, he's also got to do some serious work in terms of how to communicate more openly and honestly.
Right, because I think in the end it comes down to the trust and the betrayal, because she was like, I would have been fine not having kids, but you totally like sneak attacked that, like made it seem like it biologically wasn't possible. That's not forthcoming.
Yeah, and then like what else becomes not true from him, you know?
Exactly,
Sure.
it becomes the whole thing.
Exactly. Well, I'm curious what you're going to think about season 2, because they end up this season 1 ends with them having a baby. No, they end up having a baby, but
choosing to have a baby.
Choosing to have a baby, but I wonder if like he's gonna have some feelings.
I don't think they're like a big part. I feel like the season 2 focuses on like
other characters.
Yeah, that's what I read.
Well, we'll have more information
on books
next season.
Anyway, that was a good one.
All right, Lily, we gotta. I don't know how much time.
I think we can scrap the last one.
Sure. Yeah, we can.
Okay. The last one, just people can think about themselves. He's a tough guy. She's a very proper young lady from Australia. Summer loving. We're having a blast.
My question are Danny and Sandy still together from Greece?
Definitely not.
You don't think so? Mom,
I feel like we could just do
a
poll. No, they're not together.
I don't know. I want to know what Molly thinks. People who are opposites could be together.
Who could keep up that charade so long of those outfits she has to wear and the perm and the makeup?
And like the smoking. She doesn't even smoke.
All right. Let's go to our shout outs and recs, what we've been watching, what we think is good, what we think is not good, our buys, our rents, our mez. Lily, what have you been up to?
So a good friend of mine, shout out to Josh Ashraf, the
former guest,
cinematographer, filmmaker,
music video
director, all around wonderful childhood friend, was adamant that I watch the morning show. Bringing this back to Jen Aniston, okay, which most things should come back to Jennifer Aniston, and he was like, it's the production value. He's like, you got to watch it. It's like beautifully done, like in terms of like the production of a show. He's like, the story is good, and at the end, I'm not sure I like the ending, but he was like, I just think as like an example. And so I've been watching it. Mom loves it. She is super into it, and I'm intrigued enough. Look, when you get to watch a show with such amazing acting, Steve Carell, Jennifer Aniston, Reese Witherspoon, it's a joy to watch. Crudup, who plays like a weird, manipulative weirdo in it, and he's like definitely the bad guy, but he's so good looking that I keep being like, Mom, he's not that bad. And she's like, What's not normal, Lily? And I'm like, it's not my fault his face looks like that. Anyways, so I've been watching that. And finishing up Cobra Kai. Jose's nervous because all of his students have already watched it because it's about martial arts. And he's like, I don't know the ending. I don't want anybody to tell me. We haven't finished the ending of season 3. And I was like, well, that's on you, man.
Yeah, less
So that's
surfing. At
pretty
this
cute.
point, if you don't know what happened, I mean nothing. I
And
mean nothing
the-
really happens at the end of that.
Nothing
season.
happens.
That
Well, that's like
season
one
is
of
like a
his
The
prequel
last
to a better
5
season.
minutes. Yeah, the last 5 minutes of that
obviously
season is
not
relevant.
gonna get into this. I want to shout out to Kennard because
Kidnard Raymond,
yeah,
another one of
Kennard
our amazing
Raymond,
repeat guests.
amazing repeat guest. She's just so fantastic. I watched the show Lovecraft Country months later than you guys. I couldn't I just couldn't keep up with
Well,
life
I mean,
with a
you
new
nearly
baby.
died during that period. Like you.
Yeah, I had a
Speaking
rough
of childbirth and stuff,
postpartum.
like thank God you're okay. Like you didn't have
Yes,
time to watch that show.
I did, yeah, and I missed that. I missed a bunch of episodes of the podcast, so I was not able to and that's a show you really need to invest time and energy in. I finally finished it. I wish so badly I had a whole podcast to talk about it. There's so much there, but I highly recommend if anybody has watched the show and is listening to this and you've not heard Shy and Becky and Kennard's episode about that show, go back and listen because I literally it was a learning experience.
Oh, you're so
Listening-
kind. So your rec is an episode of our own podcast that
Yes,
you weren't
my
on?
rec
Aw, thank
is
you.
the Lovecraft Country episode of this podcast. I watched the whole show. I set up, I listened to the episode, and I literally was taking notes. And I consider myself having done cultural, my degrees in cultural studies and be a very analytical person and enjoy consuming pop culture. I get it. But then listening to other people talk about this show from a different perspective, from her perspective, your guys was mind blown at how much was there and how important I actually think this show is. It's too bad that it's in a very horror type genre because not everybody it's right for everybody. But it was fantastic.
I do want videos of mom reacting to all of the horror scenes.
So my husband loves horror. My mom hates horror, but she didn't want to miss the fun. She her level of FOMO
serious
was bigger
FOMO.
than her fear of terror, horror stuff. So she basically would sit on the couch, cover her eyes, and go, "I'm going to throw up. I'm going to throw up. This is so scary." Then she'd go into the kitchen and shout from the kitchen, "Tell me everything that's happening." And I think she liked it in the end.
It's a cool show. All right,
Yeah.
Beck, what are you watching?
So I have been watching so many good movie previews. I don't have the energy to watch the whole movie yet, but I am so excited to see One Night in Miami and to see Promising Young Woman. Those are the
Promising
two
Young
previews.
Woman looks very cool. Alison Brie.
Promising
Right.
Young Woman was
Amazing.
very
No,
good.
it's Carey Mulligan.
Carey Mulligan.
Alison Brie isn't in that?
Oh, she
Maybe
is in it.
she's in
Alison
it,
Brie is in
yeah.
it, but the
But
main
she's not the main
Alison Brie-
character.
The main
Oh.
character is Carey Mulligan. And I really want to see One Night in Miami. But it's 2 hours long, and I rarely have 2 full hours.
What's
So I have
One
to
Night in
commit.
Miami about?
That's the Regina King directed film with
Oh, cool. Awesome.
yeah, the one that's So I'm really excited to do that. I can't wait to see her as a director. I mean, it just seems so exciting.
She's awesome.
So I don't really have the stamina to watch a full 2-hour film, so I'll have to break it up. But I've been watching great movie previews. And honestly, just at the end of the day, I put on a half an hour of Psych. I don't even watch a full episode. I watch them in chunks, and it just it shuts down the system. I have a lovely night's sleep. So I'm still really
Buttersnaps.
enjoying. I'm
Bring
just
those
enjoying
cortisol
those
levels down.
The nicknames
I'm gonna-
are so good.
I'm
Yeah.
not kidding. That so I just watch old episodes of that, and it really helps with that nighttime anxiety. So that's where I'm at.
Molly, how about you? Are you watching anything? Are you reading anything?
I have rewatched. I'll tell you what I recently rewatched. I recently rewatched Killing Eve, which I really enjoyed. Yeah,
All
so
3
I really
seasons,
enjoyed. I've seen all 3 seasons. I just rewatched 2 episodes. Like I said, I don't watch a ton of TV. I do like watching Psych though. That is part of my nighttime routine
So-
periodically. So I love that.
So Promising Young Woman is by the executive producer of Killing Eve.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Very
it's
cool.
the same creative. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I thought the whole show was genius, and even that's an interesting love story we could talk about.
Yeah.
I never
I
got
think
to
that's
season 2 though.
dysfunctional.
Is there 3
I'm
full
on
seasons
season
and it's
3.
over,
Yeah.
or is there a 4th
Yeah.
season?
No, I don't think it's over.
I think COVID was the reason why they just put out season 3. I'm not even sure if they fully filmed it. They just made whatever they had work, I believe. And so I think TBD pending COVID.
Very cool. All right. So for me, my first recommendation, this is a very Lily recommendation. I started, this is I started watching the Night Stalker documentary limited series on Netflix.
Yeah, did you? Wow, you're going to a dark place.
We're like
man.
2 episodes in, and Allie and I last night.
He's like,
So
it's so
at the
bad. I
end
don't
of the
even. I'm hiding. Like when Netflix comes up for preview, I just put a piece of stick, like a post-it on that one because I'm afraid my husband's going to see it and make me watch it.
So we're in the 2nd episode. First of all, it's filmed really, really well. It's almost like
Ugh, it's gruesome.
and I don't like documentaries. You know this. They're the books of movies and TV shows.
Yes.
But this one, I was just in the mood for it. Last night, as we finished the episode, we went around and checked the locks on every single window in the house. That's like,
it's intense.
that one scaring the life out of us, and it's amazing, and it's a true story, and the detectives who are part of the story are interviewed throughout, and I don't know anything. I don't know how it resolves, but like, this is the real life Bosch.
It's
Lily.
not
Like,
good.
if you like Bosch, this is
tell
the
the ending
real.
is not
This
good.
this must be what Bosch is based on. Like these types of
Okay, well,
these
I
types
have
of
to do
LA
it. I
detectives.
feel like you're truth or daring me.
No,
like
I'm not
daring-
daring you. You should watch it. Like, this is my recommendation.
Oh.
Becky,
Mom,
I'm sure you should never
100%.
see this.
No, mom for sure skipped. I'm not. Mom's not going to watch it.
And then I'll just continue what's becoming sort of like, I would say, is now like the Dana DiLorenzo saga on our podcast. So as we recall, last week I did the Cameo Live thing with the kids, and then this week I had the pre-scheduled the Wizard World meet and greet with her. And so I debated a lot, like, like, it's a meet and greet. Should I ask her to be on the podcast? She'd already sort of agreed for my older daughter who'd invited her. And so I had my 2 minutes with her. I was set up in the booth, and first of all, she didn't like entirely recognize me because she said I looked less like a dad and more like a college student. And she's very, very funny. I think she will fit in very well with our family because she's constantly throwing zingers. And I did invite her to be on the show, and I hope she was joking, but she was like, "Wow, I'm trying to steal your kid's guest." I said, No. You can be a guest with my daughter first, but then we'd love to have you on the regular show. And then I told her that we love Perpetual Grace Limited and that we really want to talk to her about that.
It's a very cool
said,
show.
We'll talk to us about that when and if she does the show. So I have sent her the information. Ideally, Dana DiLorenzo, sometime in 2021, if we're lucky, will spend a little bit of time with us. She's definitely one of my favorite actors, and I feel thankful that I've gotten to chat with her a couple of times, but it would be so much fun to have her on the show, right? Don't you think she would have so much fun being part of this family, Molly? You don't know who she is, but
anyone would have a good time being part of this family and chatting with the three of you. It is a joy and a half.
Well, with that, we will talk about where people can follow people. Molly, remind people, where should people follow you and listen to the amazing things you're doing, or like hire you to help them work through their stuff?
For sure. So follow me on Instagram at More with Mollie, Mollie, and throw me a DM. Just say Friday, and I'll know you came from here. And I'm happy to throw some amazing resources that I have your way. So that's the best way to connect with me.
Oh, that's amazing. And I say Molly's Instagram alone gives so much amazing advice. It's fantastic. Becky, where can people follow you?
At Paper BK Princess on Twitter.
And Lily?
That's it.
At Chichi, CHICHIK Gomez with a Z on Twitter.
Wait, I'm also on Clubhouse.
You have to explain
at
more.
Becky
And
Pamela.
I'm on
Clubhouse at Becky Pamela.
That's right.
And
use my middle name.
I'm on Clubhouse as my real name. Chi-Chi. I'm just kidding. That's not my name. As Lily, Lily.
My children think it's your name.
I know, because
it's Lily's childhood self-given name.
Because you told them it was my name.
Yeah.
That's why they think it's my name.
Tia Chi-Chi.
I'm the only kid without a middle name in the family. And I guess I had that Cuban influence, but when I was very little, I thought that would be an appropriate middle name for myself.
Love it.
And then
Gomez
is Lily's husband's name.
But we have to actually give our cousin Shelly credit for reviving the Chi-Chi, because there were many years, decades, where it wasn't used, and she is the one that has consistently called you as Lily Chi-Chi. So she really brought it back to life.
Like you make one mistake when you're like 4 and you can't live it down.
Not in this family.
And you can follow me at Pancake for Table, Pancake and the number 4 and then Table. on Twitter and Instagram and Letterboxd. You can follow all of the Friday Night Movie shenanigans at Fry Night Movie on Twitter and Instagram, or FridayNightMoviePod.com. A huge thank you to our guest, Mollie Eliasof, who is
Thank
amazing.
you. Thank you for humoring us.
And
I loved it.
As in case anybody noticed, we talked about this a little bit last week with Democracy Under Assault. Check out the
Not the name of a movie that is literally
actual
real life.
Actual happening. Check out the NAACP Legal Defense Fund and the Equal Justice Initiative, two organizations our family supports. They are doing amazing work on building and strengthening our democracy here at home. Again, the work doesn't just stop with the elections, as everyone can see, and especially with respect to voting rights, which are really important. And with that, the theme music kicks in post-production. We dance our way into the afternoon, and we say our bye-byes. Bye, everybody. Love you guys. Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye. I'll be there in a sec, but I said I have a heart out. Otherwise, Mollie would have to charge us, like, for this session.
That's right. Come be on our
I'm on
show
mute, but
and do your
Mollie
job
doesn't realize
for
how
free.
much we love therapy.
Therapy.
We love
Yeah, I mean, all three of us.
all of it. It doesn't matter what kind. We'll just do it.
Yeah, we do.
love it.